So, guys, I want to talk about the Unified Championship, and I also want to talk about the tournament that they're having. And I'm not liking how they're booking this tournament, and I want to just dissect this a lot. That, first of all, the Unified Championship, it doesn't really mean anything to AEW because we all know that they kind of have an issue with too many titles. And then also, when you have a professional wrestler like Mercedes Moné with 9 titles, when Dustin Rhodes has held 3 titles, the ROH Trios Tag Team and TNT, and then Okada is the next one with the Unified, Continental, and International titles. Um, it just becomes really convoluted and stuff like that because it's almost like, why isn't he walking around with 3 titles? Why don't I see him that much on television, really? So it's just not really good look. It's almost like, how can I really invest in a title and the prestige of that title when it's not really defended all the time, when the person has other titles that they're defending, really? So it feels like too much oversaturation. I think that, I like what they do in WWE where, you may have a world heavyweight champion like John Cena hold the tag team titles, and they may do something where he holds it briefly or there's a story to it. And then also too that sometimes, like in TNA wrestling, they have the option C option where a wrestler can be the X Division champion and challenge for the world heavyweight title. And then if they win, that they win the title, really. They win the heavyweight title instead of holding both, really. So, other wrestling companies do something where a person can win a title and then they give up the other title so somebody else has it, really, or there's a tournament, really. But with AEW, they seem to kind of overdo people holding way too many titles, really. So I'm not really invested in that title for that reason. And the second thing is that Konosuke Takeshita and Okada have a really good feud, but there are some problems with this. Um, Okada just cut a promo on Takeshita. And they're both in the Don Callis family. So why isn't Don Callis and Takeshita and Okada like talking about this? Because there's some dysfunction in his family. It's kind of like a big plot hole, really, because he can be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to do something to make you guys both happy. First of all, Tony Khan is saying that, like you've been holding you have a whole 3 titles. He wants to see one of them defended. So I'm going to, so he would say something like, I'm going to like have you defend the title at the pay-per-view, and just to make him shut up, really. And then also, he says, Takeshita, you won the G1, and you're good with tournaments. You're good with wrestling people in a row, really. You want to show what you can do, really. So I'm going to do this tournament and have you and Okada face each other. So that way you guys go through this tournament. Tony Khan's off your back, Okada. Takeshi, showing what you're doing by wrestling multiple people. And then you guys are going to have a match. I know you guys are going to like make it to the main event. And then you guys can blow up steam together. How does that sound? That'll be the way to really do it. But they still have no story, whatever, really. And then the next part of this is that I don't like the people in the tournament. Like, you have Takeshita, okay. And then you have Takeshita versus Anthony Bowens. Why should I be invested in Anthony Bowens since he's losing a lot? And then there's spoilers on the Collision that looks like they're trying to redo the Acclaim and have Jerry Lynn in this. So why are you having somebody in a tournament for a championship if they're losing all the time? Would it make sense to have like somebody who's winning all the time? Or if you want to do somebody like, you put like Claudio Castagnoli, who's a former ROH champion, and somebody who is a little hard to beat. Wouldn't it make sense to have him in there? Would it make sense to have, maybe, Kalisto or Commander or somebody else who usually wins a lot, or, or other people? It doesn't make sense to have Anthony Bowens in there because he's been losing too much. Or unless you did something where he's interviewed and he says he talks to Tony Khan, he says like, hey, I want this opportunity. I really want to make something about myself. And ultimately, I'm going to really consider quitting the company. Consider it's a keyword if I don't win or get anywhere in that tournament, really. So I think then that way you incorporate Anthony Bowens, but you do it in a way where there's actually a story to it. He's charismatic, but he shouldn't be in the tournament because he loses a lot, and there's no purpose for him to be there, but he has to make a purpose. And he has a lot of good dialogue, so it's a bad it's a very unfortunate opportunity that he's not utilized. The next thing that I want to say is that you have Michael Oku, if I'm correct. He is on Ring of Honor, but he's also part of British Rev Pro Wrestling. So it's almost like, a bad match because you don't know who the hell he is. And they've done nothing to establish who he is. So it's almost like people may assume that he's a jobber, really. And if he's like from another promotion, really. It's like, I kind of suggested for an all-out match that they should have Josh Alexander defend the Maple Leaf Heavyweight Championship against a Maple Leaf opponent, really. And they should have a really great match. Even if the guy loses, they should have a really great match. Even if you do 2 out of 3 falls, really, to make Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling look good. But you wouldn't do something like have Josh Alexander in that hypothetical match and then have a person from Maple Leaf Wrestling come and then just job to him. Because really, Michael Oku, who is he? And if he's part of another promotion, I wouldn't want to be the manager of that promotion or the booker and have somebody go out. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows anything about the promotions that he wrestles for. And then he's just going to lose to Okada because obviously it makes no sense for him to beat Okada. And then he established that. And then also in the third bracket, you have Mortos. Why is Mortos wrestling in this thing? Because he always loses. And it's a bad look if he beats Masker Dorado, because Masker Dorado has had some really great matches, really. And then also the other issue is Masker Dorado. He hasn't talked on the microphone. You need people who can talk on the microphone, or they come with a manager. And then the other part of it is that he has really, really great matches. So it's almost like, again, we're doing the Dave Meltzer thing where we care more about matches than a story. Why is he in this? Wouldn't it make sense to have Hologram in this? Wouldn't it make sense to have Hologram in this and then you debut the red Hologram? That would make the most sense. Or, you have somebody, or you have like Anthony Bowens and he faces, a jobber or somebody else, or maybe like you do like, or you can even have Daniel Garcia in this tournament, or someone that kind of matters a little bit. So it's just like, you don't have the right people. And then that's kind of what's bad about a lot of these tournaments in AEW is that you just put in random people or people from other promotions and you don't establish who they are really. Or you don't have a lot of people who win. Like, for example, I was really mad when they had the when they had like the Gauntlet for the Gold at All Out, really, and they had Max Caster come out. It's almost like, what's Max Caster doing in this when he always loses and he's a joke wrestler? It would be just like if you were to have the Elimination Chamber, except you didn't announce who's coming out, and then you have, Enzo Amore or Santino Marella or Hacksaw Jim Duggan with a 2x4. Like, are you gonna take it more? Are you gonna take it seriously or less seriously because you have somebody who loses a lot in there, even if they're a joke character or not really? But you kind of see my point, really. Like, if you put in people who lose a lot or people that you don't know a lot, it diminishes that title and the champion, really. And then also when you have triple threats, really, like, you put Masker Dorada in that, and I think that'll be the best option because you're going to have a really great Dave Meltzer match. It's like, how does that... That's not good, really, because it's almost like, the story is Takeshita versus Okada. Like, they need to make part 2 at Wrestle Dream where it's Takeshita and Okada, no bullshit, really. And that could be for another title that Okada has. That could be for the international title. Takeshita gets that back. And then you can kind of say, like, okay, winner takes all or whatever. And then you can do one more match where Okada gets the title back. Then you do the Continental Classic where it's Okada versus Takeshita and Takeshita wins that. And then maybe Takeshita turns babyface or something like that. But really, this has to lead to Okada versus Takeshita. So I can kind of say this could be a series of matches. But if you don't do that, then it's like, what the fuck is Masker Dorada there for? And 100% Mortos cannot win because the problem is if Mortos wins, he loses a lot. And Masker Dorada had a great match with Bandito and CMLL, really. So it's almost like, a jobber. You're going to have Mortos who loses a lot, beat a person that has a lot of potential, really. That's like an up-and-comer, really. It's almost like, as I said, imagine if you had... somebody like Trick Williams go to the main roster, and then he loses to, a joke wrestler or something like that, really. It would be the same type of thing, really. Or imagine like Rob Van Dam. Like, imagine Rob Van Dam came to WWE in the 90s. They showed what he can do in ECW, really. Imagine if they had him lose to Doink the Clown. Had him lose to Doink the Clown. It would not make any sense, really. It would hurt him a lot, and it would hurt Masker Dorada to lose to Mordo's a person who loses that too much, really. So, and then it's almost like, why do you have Mordo's in this? Like, what's the motivation? Why is he in this? Why is he doing that? You could even make an argument of putting Kill Switch in it just to be like, okay, well, he wants to win a title. He wants to go independent, really. Or you can have Nick Wayne in it, and then you have Luchasaurus in it. Because he can be like, okay, you know what? You've bullied me. We're through. They're both in the tournament. Nick Wayne wants to gain another title, really, because really they're on the back burner. So, I mean, it's just not set up that well. It's rushed. It has people in it that don't really matter. It has people that don't matter because you don't know who the fuck they are, and also some people who lose a lot. And there's no story to this when there is a lot of great stories that you can do. You can have wrestlers that have motivations, like Anthony Bowens wanting to win at least something. And then you can also have a wrestler like Okada saying, you know what, he thinks his shit don't sting and he's better than everybody else. Do a story with his arrogance. Do a story with Don Callis trying to make peace with this tournament and give them opportunity to get at each other. And then also you have Takeshita trying to say, hey, you know what, I don't like that you act like your shit don't stink. And you know what, you're not putting in the hard work anymore. You've gone from you've gone from the Rainmaker to the lazy ass maker, type of thing, really, So it could have been done a lot better, but AEW just, is rushing this really quickly. And as I said, good matches, but if you had great story, then you'd have more people invested in this and invested in your show. It's great story leading to great matches, which draws money. It's not just great matches and a convoluted story.